For 3 weeks, one unseen rifle turned ordinary errands into a lottery of sudden death.
Victims never saw a face, only the instant life flipped from routine to irreversible. To two predators, the rules were simple. Choose a stranger, fire once, vanish, and watch the panic spread. A middle-aged man and a teenage boy drove the same loops, learning that fear itself could be a weapon.
If you stay, understand this. These were real families, real streets, and a terror that didn't need a reason.
This wasn't a war zone. These were suburbs built for safety, where danger felt like something that happened elsewhere.
America was already braced for threats, yet the next terror arrived quietly, on local roads, in plain sight.
The prime suspect had once been a disciplined soldier, until life stripped away the one thing he craved: control.
He grew up drifting and disconnected, learning early that stability could vanish without warning.
In uniform, he found identity, measured, praised, and skilled at placing shots where others could not. Then the life he tried to build collapsed. Marriage, custody, dignity, and rage moved into the space left behind. He didn't just lose, he felt erased, and he began plotting a way to force the world to look at him again. The teenager was starved for belonging, exactly the kind of hunger a manipulator can weaponize. John offered attention, structure, and certainty, then quietly taught Lee that loyalty meant crossing lines you can't uncross.
By 2002, they were ghosts on wheels, moving state to state, sleeping in parking lots, and tightening a private bond.
John chose the D.C. suburbs for one reason: density without readiness, a place fear could multiply fast. October 2nd began like any other, until a single hidden shot announced a new kind of threat.
Witnesses heard a crack, then panic, yet no one could point to a gun, a face, or a direction. The killers didn't race, they blended, leaving law enforcement chasing shadows across jurisdiction lines.
By sunrise, they were ready again, because repetition was the point, and fear was the payoff.
A landscaper worked the morning like any other, never hearing the danger over his own machine. At a pump, you stand still, and in those seconds, the killers found the easiest shots.
A woman waited quietly, reading, proof that stillness in public had become a liability.
In less than a day, the pattern formed. Single shots, outdoor errands, and no shooter anyone could describe.
Investigators stared at pins on a map, attacks scattered just enough to keep the truth from snapping into focus.
And then the fear moved from headlines into behavior. People stopped lingering, stopped walking, stopped trusting daylight.
When a child was hit outside a school, the region realized the killer had no boundaries left. Overnight, schools became fortresses, and parents started measuring every morning in seconds and sightlines.
People began pumping gas like they were dodging bullets, because standing upright felt like an invitation.
And somewhere nearby, two figures watched the coverage like a scoreboard, counting fear as proof of power. Tips flooded in, some urgent, many wrong, and every false lead drained time the region didn't have.
Investigators locked onto the wrong image, searching for one vehicle while the real threat rolled past unnoticed. The region became a maze of checkpoints, security theater against an enemy that refused to look like the profile. Then the killer escalated, leaving a message not to explain, but to control the investigation like a puppet show.
He wanted dialogue, because attention was part of the reward, and every response made him feel larger than life. The messages shifted: money, threats, grand claims, less a plan than a way to keep everyone reacting to him. The case crossed borders, and every border added delay. Precious hours where the shooter stayed one step ahead.
Millions lived inside the circle of fear, because the killer needed only one opening, and openings were everywhere. The weather was perfect, crisp air that lured people outside, exactly where a hidden rifle thrives.
They didn't need rooftops or windows, only concealment, patience, and the confidence that no one would look twice.
The attacks kept moving. New counties, new routines, forcing everyone to live as if every parking lot was a trap. Another man filled his tank, thinking about the day ahead, never knowing he'd been chosen only for visibility.
It wasn't just locals. Passing strangers became part of the count, proving nowhere on the map felt outside the game.
When someone tied to federal work was hit in a parking lot, it proved the killer didn't fear the system at all.
Parks emptied, games stop, errands became sprints, because the simplest act.
Every broadcast amplified the terror.
Exactly what the killers wanted, because attention made them feel untouchable.
Profilers built a picture from fragments, but the picture didn't match the truth, and that gap bought the killers time. The most dangerous vehicle in the region looked like any other. Quiet, common, and easy to forget the moment it passed.
John didn't just want escape. He wanted dominance, the thrill of controlling what police did next. Randomness became the weapon, because you can't plan around a threat that chooses victims like a coin toss.
Beneath the chaos sat a personal obsession. John wanted cover for a revenge he believed would restore his lost power. Lee wasn't steering, he was clinging, convinced that obedience was the price of being kept and not abandoned again.
Days passed, and the attacks returned, each new location proving the killers could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time.
By October 22nd, even the start of a work shift could become the moment everything ended.
Hundreds of officers hunted patterns in chaos, yet the killers stayed mobile, quiet, and confidently ordinary.
John couldn't resist proving himself, and in doing so, he left a thread investigators could finally pull. A separate crime suddenly mattered, because it contained identifiers the DC scenes never offered. Once the teenager's name surfaced, the fog began to lift, because names connect to records, and records connect to people.
Then came the connection. Lee wasn't alone, and the older figure beside him finally came into view.
Investigators finally shifted their gaze, away from vans, toward a common sedan that could hide in any parking lot.
Then a tip landed at the perfect time. One sighting, one location, and a chance to end 3 weeks of fear.
Teams move like shadows, because one wrong sound could turn a parking lot into another crime scene.
There was no shootout, only two exhausted figures waking to guns, lights, and the end of their game.
What police recovered confirmed the nightmare. This wasn't rumor, or hysteria, or coincidence. It was planned violence.
The region exhaled, but relief arrived alongside grief, because capture doesn't rewind 3 weeks of loss.
Then came the second phase, proof in court, names read aloud, and the long work of turning fear into accountability. Evidence spoke louder than excuses, because planning, movement, and communication all traced back to the same two men. John faced a death sentence, Lee faced life, yet the deeper question remained. Where does manipulation end and responsibility begin?
They were not symbols. They were parents, workers, neighbors, and the youngest among us, and the empty spaces they left.
This case showed how fast empathy can collapse, until strangers become targets, and killing becomes a twisted form of entertainment. At what point does being controlled stop being an excuse, and become a choice you can never take back?
If you made it to the end, remember the lesson. Monsters don't always look like monsters.
For more real cases told with clarity and restraint, subscribe, and tell me what detail in this story disturbed you most. It ended where it shouldn't have begun, on ordinary roads, under ordinary lights, with ordinary people left to carry the trauma.
Sometimes the worst terror isn't the gunshot. It's realizing safety was always more fragile than you believed.
After the first wave, fear didn't fade. It learned a schedule, and it waited for the next shot.
John didn't rush. He hunted for angles, exits, and people who paused long enough to become targets.
Their method depended on one ordinary habit. People stop moving when they think they're safe.
On October 4th, another shopper was struck, this time surviving, carrying the violence forward in her body.
Surviving didn't end the terror. It proved the shooter could leave people alive just long enough to deepen the fear.
The region invented a new choreography. Move fast, stay low, and hope randomness picks someone else.
John kept repeating the loop: drive, hunt, strike, then watch the news like a victory lap.
Lee learned to treat horror like routine, because routine was how John kept him under control. On October 7th, the violence reached a school, and the fear became personal for every parent in the region.
That morning, every safety plan collapsed because fear doesn't follow rules, and the threat didn't either.
John left a card like a signature, because control wasn't enough. He needed recognition.
He wanted a conversation with the police, not to surrender, but to make them move when he pulled the string.
The demands shifted and contradicted themselves, because the real demand was simpler: keep looking at him.
The hunt became massive, expensive, and public, yet it still felt like chasing smoke through open hands.
For weeks, the wrong theory dominated, while the real killers moved quietly in a sedan nobody feared. Their advantage wasn't just the rifle, it was invisibility, a way to shoot without ever appearing as a shooter.
On October 9th, the pattern returned. One shot, one victim, and no sign of where the bullet came from. The most ordinary pause, filling a tank, became the moment a stranger was erased.
By October 11th, the killings had crossed deeper into Virginia, proving distance meant nothing. Even travelers became part of the story, because the killers didn't choose people, they chose opportunity. On October 14th, a woman loading purchases was hit in plain view, turning a busy lot into instant chaos.
In every scene, the same question returned. Where was the shooter, and why couldn't anyone see him?
They watched the coverage like a reward, measuring success in headlines and fear. The money demand was leverage, but the true payment he wanted was obedience and attention.
Investigators tried to engage him, hoping one mistake would reveal a location, a habit, a name.
John's ego kept reaching beyond safety, and that need to prove himself became the opening.
A separate robbery case suddenly mattered, because it held identifiers the sniper scenes never offered. Once a print matched a juvenile record, the investigation finally gained something it had lacked for weeks: identity.
With the teenager's name, the fog started clearing, and the case began to move like it finally had direction.
That name led to another, and suddenly the investigation wasn't chasing a ghost, it was chasing a pair.
The hunt shifted from white vans to a blue sedan, a common shape that could hide anywhere.
On October 9th, another man was wounded, proof the spree could continue right up to the moment it ended. October 22nd brought another death, at dawn, on a bus route, where routine should have meant safety.
John tried to strengthen his threat with details, and those details became the thread that pulled him into daylight.
Early October 24th, a tip arrived. One vehicle, one rest area, and a chance to end the terror. Teams moved carefully, because everyone knew one wrong second could create one more victim.
No dramatic firefight, just two suspects pulled from sleep, and a region finally allowed to breathe. Inside the car were the answers, proof the nightmare had always been two people hiding behind ordinary metal.
Relief arrived, but it couldn't undo what had already happened, and it couldn't erase the new fear people carried. The final tally was human. 10 lives ended, 3 bodies permanently changed, and families forced into a lifetime of aftermath. The hardest part wasn't how they did it, it was why. Because the answer wasn't money, or ideology, or survival. For John, rage became a compass, pointing him toward acts that made him feel powerful again. For the teenager, belonging was the hook, and the older man used it to pull him into choices that would define his entire life. Once the manhunt ended, the story moved into court, where fear had to be translated into evidence. Ballistics, maps, notes, and patterns built a narrative more reliable than any excuse the defense could offer. The verdict landed with weight, because it wasn't just judgment, it was recognition of what the region endured. For John, the sentence was death, a legal ending to a spree that had already ended too many lives. Lee's outcome was life in prison, and debate followed him. Manipulated teenager, willing partner, or both.
The case left a mar far beyond D.C. because it proved terror doesn't need an ideology. It only needs intent.
It felt different because it attacked ordinary places, turning daily life itself into the battleground. Randomness wasn't a lack of plan. It was the plan, because it made everyone feel equally exposed.
The manhunt cost millions and consumed thousands of hours, yet it still depended on one break, one mistake, one tip.
In the end, a single report did what weeks of terror couldn't. Put the right vehicle in the right place.
The most important detail is not the killers. It's the names and lives they interrupted without permission. Long after the headlines, families carried the real sentence. Birthdays, school years, and ordinary days missing someone forever.
People remember this case because it changed how a city looked at open space, ordinary errands, and the idea of safety.
Lee's role forces an uncomfortable debate. How much of a person remains when someone else rewrites their moral compass? The most terrifying motive was simple. They watched the fear like entertainment, and that made stopping them harder to predict. One shot reduced witnesses, reduced clues, and made every attack feel like it could happen again without warning.
They used distance, angles, and quick exits, turning parking lots into shooting galleries without ever stepping into view. Multiple jurisdictions meant multiple systems, and every delay created another gap the killers could slip through.
The real target was the mind of the city, and for 3 weeks, the city lived inside the killer's imagination. After this, normal didn't feel automatic anymore. It became something people had to rebuild.
When the youngest among them was hit, it felt like a warning that nothing was off limits.
In the end, it wasn't genius that stopped them. It was the killer's need to communicate, to be seen, to matter.
This case warns how quickly a grievance can become a spectacle when someone discovers fear feels like power.
The only proper ending is remembrance, because the victims were never part of a game. Only the killers pretended they were.
When the motive is fun, prediction fails, because there's no goal to negotiate, only appetite.
At what point does manipulation stop being an explanation and become a choice that must be owned?
10 people died because 2 people decided fear was entertaining, and the city was the audience.
If you want more true cases told with restraint and clarity, subscribe and keep your eyes open in ordinary places. Sometimes the scariest part is how normal the world looks right before it changes.
For many, a gas station never felt the same again, because the mind remembers what the body survived.
Autumn kept moving, leaves kept falling, but the region carried a scar that didn't fall away with the season. Subscribe for more true stories, and tell me, what moment in this case changed how you think about safety? The terror ended, but the lesson stayed. Ordinary life can be disrupted by people who no longer see others as human. In the aftermath, court records and testimonies tried to explain what pure fear had felt like in real time.
From October 2nd to October 24th, a metro area lived inside a countdown it couldn't see.
The core dynamic was simple. One man demanded control, and one boy needed belonging, and together they became lethal. Cases like this force one question. How do we protect a society from people who treat life like a game? If this story changed how you see the world, stay with the channel, because the darkest truths are often the quietest.
This was the D.C. sniper terror. 3 weeks that proved fear can be manufactured with a single hidden trigger.
And even after the arrests, the question stayed. How did 2 people make 5 million feel hunted? Because the weapon wasn't only the rifle, it was uncertainty, the fear of not knowing where danger lived.
For weeks,
Every open space felt exposed. Gas pumps, parking lots, school curbs.
And when the cameras left, the family stayed, living with empty chairs, unfinished conversations. This case proved a brutal truth. Terror doesn't need numbers. It only needs patience, planning, and a public force to watch. And it forced another question. When violence becomes a game, how do we stop it before fear becomes normal? If you want more cases told with clarity and restraint, subscribe. Because until next time, remember, monsters don't always look like monsters, and that's what makes them dangerous.